finally, I can talk about Marvel's Spider-Man 2. A special thank you to PlayStation Canada for providing me a review copy of Marvel Spider-Man 2 so that I can review it for you guys. And then also I wanted to mention the footage you're going to see here in this video. It was all captured in performance mode. And I know so many people at home are wondering, they've been asking me a ton, like, is this going to be a spoiler-filled or non-spoiler review? The game isn't officially out yet. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. Of course, this is a non-spoiler review. With that being said, I imagine there are a lot of you out there right now that still don't even want to see anything extra for this game. And I get that, and I totally understand. So if you don't want to see any more bits of Marvel Spider-Man 2, if you don't want to hear anything more about this game, you have been warned. There are still some mild spoilers ahead. I don't want anybody in the comments giving me any crap, because now we're about to jump in and we're going to review Marvel Spider-Man 2. Let me start off by saying that this game really is a triumph. Insomniac has delivered on an epic, truly mind-blowing story, a Spider-Man story that people are going to remember for a very long time. As a matter of fact, Insomniac Games might have just delivered one of the best superhero games of all time. This game is a masterclass in cinematic storytelling. You really get the sense when playing through the story that Insomniac has shaken off some of the initial nerves they may have had previously about handling such a massive, beloved IP. Going into Spider-Man 2, they know they've done a good job with the characterization, and so you feel this confidence in the writing and direction for the game as we're now going full throttle in this well-established world. I love the way this game continues to play on the concept of when Spider-Man wins, either Peter or Miles or both loses. It's the constant struggle of what it means to take on such great power. Miles is struggling as he tries to write his college essay. He finds it hard to even think about who he is outside of being Spider-Man. I mean, I'd have to imagine that it's a profound sense of loneliness to know that there's only one other person who can do the things that you do, and he's now become increasingly busy with his old best friend having returned. And that other person, Peter Parker, is still struggling financially as he tries to keep up with the mortgage on Aunt May's house. And like I said, Harry's back, which of course is great, but when Pete obtains the symbiote, there are positive and obviously negative effects to that. And this brings out a performance in Yuri Lowenthal that will easily nab him a nomination at the Game Awards later this year, and I'd say it's pretty much a lock. You can make a strong case that he's gonna win that award. There's so much range in Yuri's performance, and you may think you know exactly what I'm talking about, but believe me, there are a few surprises in this game where Yuri is given an opportunity to do something very different with his voice, and I was truly blown away with how good of a job that he did. The entire supporting cast is also fantastic. I give huge props to Graham Phillips for what he was able to pull off with Harry Osborn in this game and how well he bounces off of Yuri's Peter Parker. They have great chemistry during every scene they're on screen together, and the game doesn't need to do too much convincing on how great of friends these two were before Harry's disappearance. I have to give Insomniac credit for making you not feel like you missed out on the story beats that were presented before we even jumped into the narrative from Spider-Man PS4. In a weird way, they make us, the player, feel like we're a part of the history that's been established here. You know, in a lot of ways, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is about grief and the pain that we feel from that grief, and how sometimes that pain can turn to anger. Both Miles and Peter experience these things in their own unique ways, and it's very compelling. I was glad to see that Insomniac weren't trying to pull any punches here. Don't get me wrong, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is full of heart and full of laughs.
They kidnapped me. I did not consent. Menaces. I'm surrounded by menaces. But J. Jonah Jameson is not going anywhere, you hear me? I'm not going anywhere! Wait, where am I going?
But for the most part, this is a very serious story. Also, narratively speaking, I gotta say the side quests in Marvel Spider-Man 2 are juicy. We've gotten quite the upgrade from chasing pigeons around. Seriously, some of the most mind-blowing moments for me in this entire game happened during the side quests, and that's all I'll say. It also cannot be understated how menacing and vicious Jim Peary is as Kraven. The level of intensity that he brings to each scene had me sweating bullets sometimes. He does with this character something you always hope to achieve when playing a villain, and that's the idea that every second he's not on screen, the player is looking forward to when he'll pop up next. I'd be jumping into every new mission hoping we'll just get a little more of Kraven because of how damn good he is in this game. And it certainly helps that every time Kraven's on screen, he's accompanied by one of the best scores for a villain that I've ever heard in any form of media.
What are you? Track the lizard. The spider is mine.
won't say much about Venom, all right? But, you know, Tony Todd is the freaking man. You already knew that, okay? I didn't need to say that much to you, but he truly elevated an already quite scary interpretation of Venom. Even if presentation-wise, Venom is this massive, intimidating beast, without the voice of Tony Todd behind it, it wouldn't be nearly as effective. In general, the rogues gallery in this game is pretty impressive. There are a good number of Spider-Man villains that you may expect to be seeing in this game, but also some that you will not see coming. I know you think you know, but you don't. Seriously though, please do yourself a favor and try everything humanly possible to avoid spoilers for this game. I know that even when you're watching this review, you think you're seeing a lot, but believe me, please trust me when I say that you haven't seen anything yet at all. Yuri Lowenthal was not lying when he told us all the way back in May from that PlayStation Showcase demo that that was just a thwip of the Spider-Berg. The story just keeps building and building and getting crazier and crazier with one insane, jaw-dropping moment to another. Twists and turns you never would have guessed, and a third act that will go down as one of the most bold, bombastic, brilliant pieces of storytelling in the history of this character's 60+ years of existence. You do not want to know how it all goes down. I know it's hard to resist when spoilers are popping up left and right, but I beg of you, avoid them at all costs. It'll only elevate your experience to go in knowing as little as possible. All right, let's now move on to the gameplay. The combat in Marvel Spider-Man 2 is very satisfying. The symbiote abilities, alongside what you can do with Peter's iron arms and Miles' blue bioelectricity or his Venom powers from the first game, offer up so much freedom in every encounter you find yourself in against a group of enemies. What I really loved about this too is that you can mix and match these abilities. You aren't tied specifically to the symbiote powers or the iron arms. And the same applies to Miles and his Venom or blue bioelectricity. It's all power to the players, allowing each and every person who plays this game a unique experience from one another. General combat outside of the new abilities that our heroes have has also gotten quite the upgrade. There are plenty of new moves that Peter and Miles can perform once you've gone through and upgraded their skill trees enough. Definitely take a close look at the shared skill tree. There's a lot there that will open up new ways to engage in any combat encounter with both the Spider-Men. Although I will mention, on the topic of skill trees, I found it odd that there are certain abilities that I had to re-unlock that I already had unlocked in the previous games. You know, the big point launch that sends you further and then has that little explosion kind of when you jump off of a point. I had to re-unlock that again, even though that was something that you had to unlock in the first game and you had to unlock in Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now granted, you can get it pretty early on, but still, it's weird that for the third time in a row, I had to unlock the point launch, or at least the upgraded version of the point launch. There's also a good variety of enemies that you're going to face off against that will require you to utilize every tool in your arsenal. And what I liked about the enemy variety too is that it isn't frustratingly difficult this time around. It's a nice challenge, and you'll know which enemies will cause you some problems, but it's never to the point where you'll be annoyed at the mere sight of a certain enemy type. And hey, speaking of your arsenal, I'm so happy with the fact that gadgets are way more streamlined in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Gone are the days of having to grind the fun action of a fight to a complete halt while you pull up the gadget wheel and decide which one you want to use. Now everything is just tied directly to the R1 button with 4 gadgets to unlock that both the Spider-Men share, as well as having your classic web shooters available. This is a much needed change. I don't want or need 10 different gadgets when I only end up using like 1 or 2 most of the time. Not to mention, they are all pretty fun to use in this game. I mean, especially I love the web grabber, where when you upgrade it enough, not only does it pull in a group of enemies, but it also pulls together any throwable items in the vicinity, doing some hefty damage to anyone that gets caught in the middle. I was also thoroughly impressed with the stealth in this game, which got a substantial boost for me thanks to 2 very small, very minor upgrades that make the world of a difference. Those upgrades being the web lines that you can use to help give you more vantage points to perform stealth takedowns, but also when you get the upgrade in the shared skill tree, the ability to perform dual stealth takedowns on enemies. In the past games, unless I was forced to, I would just jump right into the action and fight as many people as possible, as loud as possible. Now, in Spider-Man 2, I find it equally engaging to try and take down a room of enemies without being seen as I would making a ton of noise. And I mean, I'd be remiss if we were talking about gameplay to not bring up how much better the Traversal is in Spider-Man 2. Not only do we have a ton of new ways to roam around this very large, very dense open world, but the old ways have been given a significant boost in speed. Web swinging already feels faster, but you'll soon realize realize that the speed at which you start with can only go up as you level up and spend your resources on the traversal tree for your suit tech. Couple all this with loop-de-loops, which are insanely fun to perform, super slingshots or regular slingshots, and some familiar traversal mechanics that you might remember from Spider-Man Miles Morales that now has been implemented for both Miles and Peter in this game, and you'll be zipping from one end of the open world to the other in a matter of seconds. I'll also reiterate what I said when I got my hands on with the game last month, in that the web wings are, in my opinion, the single most fun traversal mechanic I've ever utilized in a video game. If you're like me and sometimes just like to jump back into the Insomniac Spider-Man game simply to swing around for a few hours, then you'll be very happy with how therapeutic of an experience it is to do exactly that in Marvel Spider-Man 2. It's very easy to lose track of how much time you've been spending free roaming around the city. And I'll also say that the wall crawling is technically faster in this game, but it's a very minor bump. I still never found the urge to be sticking to walls unless it was absolutely necessary. And I know a lot of people were asking me if you can run down a wall. That does not seem to be the case, nor are there any Web of Shadow style wall combat in this game. I think this is certainly one area of Spider-Man and his gameplay that Insomniac can improve upon if they were to ever make another game in the future. And honestly, I feel like the only way that they can possibly improve upon this is by introducing wall combat in some way. Because, I mean, come on guys, let's just be real here. Wall crawling is not something you're excited to do when you get into a Spider-Man game. It's the bottom of the list of things you want to do. And that's the case for any Spider-Man game, not just the Insomniac ones, because the wall crawling isn't the greatest. That's just in general. Swing steering is another hot topic of conversation. And yes, if you were to turn down the swing steering assistance to 0, it can be quite jarring to get the hang of how much you need to control your swinging. For me personally, I hovered at around 7, where I got most of the assistance they usually offer us from the past 2 games, but also that slight bit of control. It struck a good balance for me, but what's great about this is it's a feature in general that offers a ton of customization for how players would want to experience this game. And yes, the MJ missions are back, but they are very few and far between this time around, and they're a lot more engaging than they were in the last game. At least that's in my personal opinion. What I was glad to see more than anything is that you can finally sprint as MJ. It made the pacing during her missions not feel as slowed down as they were in Spider-Man PS4. Moving on though, Insomniac, as we've heard many times now, has expanded upon the open world in Marvel Spider-Man 2, now offering up the opportunity to roam around Brooklyn and Queens. This is such a great addition to an already very lively open world. Now it really feels like as though there are an endless amount of sights to see, collectibles to obtain, and also plenty of fun quests scattered around the city. I already mentioned how great those side quests are, but you also have some smaller, more personal tasks in your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man app, similar to what was offered in Spider-Man Miles Morales. These missions allow you to connect with your city on a more personal level for Peter and Miles, and thanks to all those fun new traversal mechanics, roaming around the suburban areas of Queens isn't as difficult as it should be for someone that usually needs some high rises to swing from. And I quickly wanted to mention that while there are some really cool suits in this game, and I do think that Miles got a fantastic selection of them to choose from, I feel as though overall, the selection of suits, especially for Peter, isn't as strong as it was in Spider-Man PS4. This is in part due to the fact that there are quite a bit of returning suits in Marvel Spider-Man 2, and don't get me wrong, most of the costumes that are back are great, and some of them feel new considering that they have new color palettes to choose from, and plus, you know, this is a pretty game. The graphical fidelity in Marvel Spider-Man 2 is upped quite a bit. It's taking advantage of the PS5, so the suits look nicer, but I feel like Peter was just missing out on a couple of comic book suits that I was almost certain would pop up in the game. Who knows though, in the past, Insomniac has done like free DLC drops where they give us some more suits to choose from, so they might do the same thing here for Spider-Man 2. I can't complain though for Miles. My goodness, the suits that you can get for Miles are really cool, man. There also isn't still a ton of variety in the random crimes that happen around the city when you're playing the game, but I don't know, this never really bothered me in the first 2 games. There's some stuff that's new, there's some stuff that's different, but yeah, you know, for the most part, you're chasing cars around or you're stopping a mugging. It's fairly simple, just beat up some bad guys. The really cool part about the random crimes though in this game is that sometimes you'll jump into one and the other Spider-Man will be there. In some instances, the Spider-Man will already have been there by the time you get to the fight. In others, they'll join you in the middle of the fight. And then you both perform some really awesome team takedowns, and it's super flashy and super fun. It's particularly great that you can have a little interaction with the other Spider-Man after the crime has been resolved. There's some great Easter eggs and some pretty funny moments that happen from that. Overall, I can say with confidence that for me, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a masterpiece. I'm putting this one on my Mount Rushmore of superhero video games, no doubt about it. There are some minor flaws and some quality of life fixes nuances that I hope they add into the game in future patches, like specifically the option to be able to change the time of day and weather after you beat the game. Seriously, Insomniac, why wasn't this in here day one? But then also, please, Insomniac, let me replay missions. I feel like this was something I remembered being an option you could do in Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I don't know why it's missing in this game. So I'm hoping they take in some feedback from the community, and those are things that, again, we will see in future patches for the game. But outside of that, I mean, I could not recommend Marvel Spider-Man 2 enough. Not that there were people watching, I imagine, who were like on the fence. I'm sure a lot of you already have your pre-order secured or are definitely going to be getting the game day one. But for those of you who are locked in, you know, for those of you who are ready to go, let me just say, if your expectations are high, if they're astronomical, I can promise you, and I'm telling you this with certainty, that they'll at the very least be met, if not surpassed. Believe the hype. Marvel Spider-Man 2 delivers on all fronts. It is a home run. And that's why I give Marvel Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac Games a 9.5 out of 10. This is a Game of the Year contender. Yuri Lowenthal is a lock for best performance of this year. I can't wait for you all to experience it. And with that being said, if you enjoyed my review, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe for more Spider-Man 2 content coming your way. I've been Caboose, and I'll see you guys later.